We came across the project through the producers of the film, Claire Evans and John Irvin, who is also, John is the director of the film. They're from London, and they actually came across the story 3 or 4 years ago at South Africa House at a dinner, where they were seated next to Lord Joel Joffe, who told them of the story of the mystery of Mandela's gun, which he was given a Makrov pistol in '62 by the then Emperor Haile Selaisse, and he apparently buried it at Lily's Leaf Farm in Johannesburg before he was arrested.
And he gave him a gun in a ceremonial
weapon, which is reputedly the first weapon of the armed struggle against the regime. And John thought this would make a fabulous story. And at the time, I believe, the guys were having discussions. They met various politicians from South Africa, and everybody thought this was one of the great untold stories. And I guess what has happened is the story has blossomed. And as one has done more and more research, we have a pile of researchers on board this project. We've worked very closely with Lily's Leaf, Nick Walpe and his team, and a lot of independent researchers. The story has just really grown. And what it really is a metaphorical search for the gun, starting with Mandela leaving South Africa in '62 to go and get support across Africa from the newly liberated African countries, and where he underwent training in Algeria, Ethiopia, Tunisia, Egypt, across West Africa.
And how do you make a dramatic arc out of this particular, the gun's given to him, it goes missing? How do you make a story from that? As
we've developed the project, and as we've commenced the project, and as more research has revealed, the story of the gun is indeed itself very interesting, because where is this gun? Is it indeed, as rumor has it, buried in Lily's Leaf, as he himself said? And there are a variety of witnesses who testify to the gun being buried at Lily's Leaf. And part of the project will be to dig for the gun. And whether we find it or not, I think both results, both outcomes lends itself to a very interesting story. But what's happened in the process is that the film is not only a feature film, but it's also a documentary feature film. So it is a hybrid. It includes both recreation of his journey and key witnesses, testimonies from people who knew him, who were there at the time, as well as incorporating important archive. So it's shot in black and white. It will have key interviews of people who were there at the time, and we will weave both the documentary element and a fictional element. But as far as possible, we've actually gone out of our way to shoot in the exact locations where he trained, where he slept, where he lived, and his journey. So we trace the journey through Ethiopia, down through the Sudan, through Khartoum, to Tanzania, Dar es Salaam, and back through Botswana into South Africa.
And presumably this is a formative journey for him.
It was very much a Mandela that few in the world remember, because he was in his early 40s, he was the angry young man. Most of the world knows him as a man who spent 27 years in jail, who came out and liberated the country. We deal with everything up to his arrest in '62.
And he took a very different political position, didn't he, at that point?
It was in the formative months, formative days, formative years of Umkhonto weSizwe, the armed wing of the ANC. And it deals with a lot of the leadership who were arguing for and against military struggle. And what option did the struggle have at that moment in time? So we deal with all of those issues in hopefully an entertaining as well as educational way.
So how is the shooting going?
The shooting has gone extremely well. So we've shot for about 10 weeks in South Africa, in both Johannesburg and Durban, where we recreated his arrest. We've shot in Ethiopia for 2 weeks. We've shot in Dar es Salaam. We've shot in Botswana, and we still have some shooting to do. We've been doing interviews all along the way with key people.
So it's a complicated project.
It's a complicated project. We've been searching for archive all the time, appropriate archive, and we'll see how much of that we use at the end of the day. But it's really trying to be as authentic as possible to his journey, to the times that he experienced. And it has relevance to audiences today. I think when you look at what is going on in the Ukraine, in North Africa, in the Middle East, where people are rising up and using armed struggle, armed insurrection against the regime, we really delve into the debates of for and against an armed struggle when you find yourself fighting a tyranny, an illegal regime, and the debates that are had amongst leadership. And it's really also about leadership. It's about the nature of leadership, of what one has to do in order to lead an army. I mean, it was the first time Mandela was tasked with creating an army. Yeah. And he who had never fired a gun before.
And indeed, very few in the leadership.
Very few in the leadership. So it was a certain naivety in the time. It was a particular era in the world, on the world stage. The Cold War was in full swing. What makes this interesting is that, you know, John is a very established, very well-versed director, having made Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, the original TV drama series, Dogs of War, Hamburger Hill, and has all his life dealt with looking at films that deal with war and politics. So this is a documentary thriller, because all of the time that Mandela's on this journey, the so-called Black Pimpernel, moving through Africa, getting support from various African leadership, he was being followed by the CIA, by MI6, by the South Africans. And they were obviously sharing information amongst themselves about the activities of the ANC and the leadership. So we bring in those elements as far as we can.
And when will we see the film, do you think?
I would say we've completed now the bulk of the filming. We've still got some key interviews still to do. We're hoping to complete the film in time for Toronto and Venice, if we can, and to get the film released in South Africa before the end of the year.